Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Uphill Battle. Um, May 21st. We're rolling into Memorial Day weekend. Um, the weather is getting nice, getting hot, and the politics are doing the same thing.
For
It's
sure.
very heated, very heated. Um, let's just jump right into it. We want to start it off as we always do. We want to do something that's look around the spectrum of the country and look at different local things that's been going on that have some real bearing. Like we always say, all politics are local,
Hmm.
um, and also this could have bearing on some things that's going on across the country. So, what you got for me?
Yeah. So I want to start off with I live in New York again, and what's been in the news lately is the Long Island Railroad. Some people just say the Long Island Railroad. Some people call it the LIRR. I call it the Lur. I guess it's like a Queens Brooklyn thing or something. I don't know, but a lot of people don't refer to it as the Lur, but I do. So the Lur, they recently went on strike. It ended, but on Saturday the 16th, 3,500 engineers represented by five different unions went on strike after being unable to agree on a contract with the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority. And they went on strike. And this is actually good news for the Knicks because the last time there was a Lur strike, the Knicks won the Eastern Conference Finals. So this was back in 1994, and it lasted 2 days. And the governor of the state, Kathy Hochul, she said that if the Lur went on strike, everybody would lose. The Lur is the busiest commuter railroad in the country, and the strike impacted about 300,000 commuters from Long Island, Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn. Um, so the MTA and the train engineer unions, they've been in negotiations for years. So this has been going on for a minute. Both the unions and the MTA, they went to the Presidential Emergency Board to seek help on trying to get this deal done. And what the Emergency Board is an agency of the government that mediates labor and management relations within the railroad and the airline industries in the country. And during these like mediations, the union actually or the board actually sided with the unions. And what this did for the unions is gave them power to continue to like dig their heels in and continue to try to fight for what they wanted. And what they were doing is they were seeking a retroactive 9.5% wage increase, which covers the last 3 years. So the last 3 years of them trying to negotiate for this new contract. And it's also the same deal that the MTA offered other transit and civil unions in recent months. So it wasn't like a foreign concept, but it's something that they were asking for. But they were also seeking 14.5% wage increases over the next 4 years to combat inflation and the rising cost of living. And that would have included a 5% raise in this current fiscal year. The MTA, they have been open to wage increases, but they demanded that the work rules be changed, specifically for engineers represented by the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, or the BLET. And this is really interesting. I didn't even know about this, but I looked into this, and if you for these specific engineers, if you during one of your shifts, regardless of how many hours or additional hours that you work, if you do anything other than which like if you're switching tasks or responsibilities during that 8 hour shift, you're entitled to an additional 8 hour shift pay, even if it falls within your 8 hour shift. So if you're operating a route from Penn Station to Port Jefferson to Port Washington, right? So you operate the regular route there. If then they say, hey, we need you to operate this special route that's running from Grand Central to City Field because the Mets are playing today. So then if you go back there and now you're operating a special route, you're going to get an additional 8 hours pay, even if you only worked your whatever the case. If you only worked your eight to 8 to 5 or whatever, the 8 to 4 or whatever the case is. Still, because you did that, you're going to get an additional 8 hours pay. So what you've probably seen in the media is some people being like, oh, there's a bunch of these engineers that, just, without overtime, they make, $100,000, $200,000 a year. And yeah, that is true. Only a specific portion of them, but not the entire 3,500. You know what I mean? So and these rules, they date all the way back to the steam engine era of the 1920s, and they haven't been updated since the Lord was rescued from the Pennsylvania Railroad and taken over by the state. And so the MTA, they wanted these rules to change, and they were
Right.
offering wage increases, but it was less than what the union was asking for. And
Right.
they were also willing to give a $3,000 one-time payment. And the MTA said that in order to cover the extra costs that they would have to incur, if they gave the union what they wanted, they would have to reduce service or cut service, by reducing routes, um, limiting the amount of departures. They would cut jobs, reducing jobs, and they would also have to raise fares on on the commuters. So the union, they officially went on strike on Saturday, and what the MTA did to try to combat um, just the inconvenience for the commuters is that they offered shuttle buses to just the closest subway station that the lure operates at. But for a lot of Long Island commuters, that's 2 hours away from
Wow.
where they live. Yeah, so a lot of people, they just chose to drive, and this extended their commutes by like well over 2 hours. Somebody that I work with, he takes the lure consistently, and he drove in one day. It took him 2.5 hours to get there, and then he went home, and it took him an additional 3 hours to get home. So then the next day, he had just decided to wait until like 8 o'clock to leave, and then by then the roads were a little bit clearer. So then it didn't take him that long to get home. So this it was a problem for people.
Not to cut you off, Dal.
No,
I
yeah, yeah,
wanted to. I don't know if you. We have several people that's actually speaking spoke to us on the chat and say hello. And I'm actually first time I've seen it. I want to thank everybody that's tuning in for our discussion and hello. Thanks for your support, and hopefully the knowledge that we're giving you is informative to you and it is
yeah.
helpful. But sorry to cut you off. But go ahead back on.
No, yeah, yeah. So, all that so the strike started, but it ended. So they reached a deal on Monday night, and service resumed on Tuesday at noon. So they did reach a deal, and it doesn't require any fare hikes or tax increases on the taxpayers or on the commuters. And the deal, it gives workers a 4-year contract, and it raises their pay by 3%, 3%, 3.5%, and then 4.5%, which again is less than what the union was asking for, but it's not, too far off. And they will receive a $3,000 lump sum payment that they were asking for, and they're also going to get full retroactive pay for the previous
The past.
years.
Okay,
Yes,
right.
yeah. So again, in the units, the unions, they wanted 5% in the final year, but they settled for the 4.5 and the one lump sum payment. Yeah.
Right. That's
So
called negotiation, though. That's not just
exactly, yeah,
negotiating. That's
yeah,
negotiating.
yeah, for
Right,
sure.
right, right,
And so the unions, they still need to, because again, it's 5 different unions that
right.
that are involved in this. So they all still need to individually vote to ratify the deal. But the wins are looking like it's going to get approved. But I just wanted to highlight this because one, again, it's a labor dispute, and I most of there were a lot of people that were coming out in favor of the unions, but again, there were these hit pieces against specific engineers and stuff like that, because like, hey, you guys are making so much money, so why are you asking for more? Well, also, it doesn't matter how much money they're making, the cost of living is going up, all the cost of everything is going up. So if your wages also aren't increasing, then it's going to be harder for you, unless you're making millions of dollars, which these people are not. Then you're
No.
not going to see, yeah, you're not going to really feel how much money that is. um but it's just always good to
And the
see
cost of living in New York City is
yeah,
just
it is.
So it's
Yeah,
comparable.
higher than most places. Yeah, exactly. And this is coming off of the heels of the New Jersey Transit workers that went on strike last year, and that strike lasted 3 days and impacted thousands of commuters within, New York and New Jersey as well. And also there was another. I'm blanking on what the name of the railroad is, but there was another strike when Biden was president, and he had went
Mhm.
in and basically like he squashed it.
He
Um,
squashed it and made it. It
yeah,
was made it mandatory. But
yeah,
this, I mean, the intersect with what you're saying is the fact of the matter is, I we grew up in Jersey. We were right near Philly. And for people that don't know, SEPTA is king. SEPTA is the transportation arm in the Philadelphia area. And SEPTA will go on strike once every 3 years or 4 years, whenever the contract comes. And at the end
yeah,
of the day, they had to pay them. And that's the power of actually. I'm very pro union because I'm pro worker.
hmm,
But I mean, some people have issues with unions because sometimes they say unions are, you know, protect the lowest of the low when it comes to workers protections. But the fact of the matter is, workers do need protections. That's why in so many states, just like the state that I live in Delaware, it's a no fault state. You can be terminated for like any reason. You know, so when you have the leverage, you should use it,
yeah,
and you should actually get. If you are so, when we talk about capitalism, and we talk about actually having leverage and having the sources of being important, you you have the leverage and you are important enough because nothing can flow without you. You talk about 300,000 people depend on this to be able to. That is the system. Everybody has to get from work to school and everywhere, and this is important. These are everyday people,
yeah,
everyday workers that negotiate proper compensation for their work. And I always have a problem with people talking about how much somebody makes based on the job that they do. I mean, they do it with sports, and they do it with all or anything. And this is the reality. And I tell people this often when they bring up something like, if you are the best at what you do, whatever it is you do, and you are a professional, shouldn't you be compensated for
hmm,
it? I can't. I personally can't can drive a train, and somebody may say it's not that big of a deal. You can get trained, this, that, another. It's a skill. It's a high,
yeah,
and you have many. You just like I compare a a railroad driver just as much as a plane pilot. You know,
yeah.
to somebody that pilots a plane. So I'm always pro union, and I'm always glad to see when regular everyday workers actually are able to get um, their fair pay and it's negotiated um, because they're not stuck just taking whatever someone hands to them. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so did you want to add on anything to about that point or
No,
no?
just like you said, I feel like everyone should be pro worker because at the end of the day, just like you mentioned, like, yeah, in this case, it was 300,000 people that were going to be impacted by it when Biden had came in against that the other railroad. That was going to be a supply chain issue that they were talking
Yeah,
about. But is this thing is, but hey, if you not showing up to work means that it's going to impact all these people. That just shows how important that your work is, and that could be It doesn't even have to be railroad, or it doesn't have to be airline. You can insert any kind of industry into that sentence, and it would still be true. That's why everyone should be on the side of the workers every time. So this is a win for them, obviously, but it is a win for labor. And those are the kind of things that need to be applauded. And this is, there's still places that are fighting just for, the right to unionize. Think about Starbucks, think about Amazon, all these like places. And what they're doing is, they're shutting down warehouses, or, going elsewhere, or Starbucks, they're shutting down stores, just because, that the workers voted to unionize. So a win is a win, for labor, and that's a win for everybody.
That's just so anti-American, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just yeah, when you don't get your way, you take your ball. You actually take the court and go home. It's not even taking the
Yeah.
ball. You take the court. Um, what I wanted to touch on the local front was a lot of primaries in the last couple of weeks. Um, the one that I really wanted to harp on is close to us in Pennsylvania, um, and in the third district in Philadelphia, whereas though Chris Rabb, who was the progressive candidate, uh, won the Democratic primary. He was um, he was backed by the Democratic Socialist Party, and he belongs to the Workers' Family Party, um, and he was outspent. It was a grassroots program. It was a three-person race. He defeated Sharif Street, who was a state representative. Chris Rabb is also a state representative. And then another. The woman's name is. She's a doctor. Um,
Alice
uh,
Stanford.
Stanford. Yes. Okay, you're familiar. And she had a lot of money from PAC. Um, the She got 24% of the vote. I don't know if she was put into the race to try to. She kind of peeled off some of Street's, who was the establishment candidate. Um, Sharif Street is actually the son of former Philadelphia Mayor John Street. So the name recognition alone, um, um, wages high in Philadelphia. Um, but it was a grassroots, and he is Chris Rabb is known as a self-styled progressive. He had basically all the national AOC, uh, Rashid Tlaib, and Omar. They all endorsed him,
Hmm.
um, and this is a tenement to what I believe is what's going to have to happen. Because the craziest thing, I don't know if you saw it, Dal, but I wanted to bring to our viewers. Sharif Street, when he was giving his concession speech, made it known that we have to look at ourselves and look at the how the grassroots and the people are swaying and how they're moving. And in talking about having a more progressive voice when it comes to democratic politics
Hmm.
and not staying in the same. And I'm ad libbing and kind of not, I mean, he's not quoting, but I felt as though he was conveying the fact that the establishment and the politics as is, and we just the normalization of just doing it. The status quo is not going to work anymore. So we need to be looking at more of what are we going to do to make things more affordable for people and make things make the government and the states and everything actually work for the constituents. And I thought that was interesting. Um, and one of the big things, one of his big platforms, Rab, was he was pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel.
Yeah.
And some of you people may think that what does that have to do with X, Y? People are actually waking up, and you may not understand the politics that's going on in the Middle East, but you do understand genocide, and you do understand that when brown people are, you know, trampled upon, and they're being exterminated, and also their land is being taken from. Sounds very familiar to a lot of
Mhm.
people that look like us because they understand history. So that's a very blue seat. We're going to the general, and he'll be representing because Dwight Evans is retiring. But
Mhm.
also, what I saw that was very, very interesting, also in Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh area. I don't know if you've seen this. In the Allegheny area, whereas though it was only about a 25% turnout for registered voters for the primaries, but 75% of the votes that came in on that primary were Democrats.
Mhm.
And Democrats had a very good day, including um, Josh, Governor Josh Shapiro. Of course, he won his primary, so he's the incumbent. But
Yeah.
the three Democrats that he backed for House seats in Congress, they all won their primaries overwhelmingly,
Yeah.
and they're trying to unseat three current Republican uh, senators, congressmen that are in. These are all what we would call swing districts, whereas though they go back and forth. They're not safe seats. These are a lot of independents that live there, and also it's a lot of people sway from back and forth based on the candidate and what they want to do. So it's you actually have to be kind of like middle of the road type of politics. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you have to deal with what we call kitchen table issues. So it'd be very interesting. But the turnout for Democrats in the primaries been very interesting in Pennsylvania. So that's something to look at, especially with all the shenanigans that's been going on. You have
Yeah.
something else you want to touch on locally and
Yeah, I
somewhere?
mean, just to continue
Okay.
off of these races. So in the Philadelphia race in particular, to reach Pete, it's interesting. I didn't even know this until I looked into this race last week, but in 2022 he had worked with um the Republicans in the state house to redistrict like the state's districts, and he was gonna they were gonna cut Democratic seats and give the Republicans, I think it was like four additional seats, but he specifically carved the district to make sure that he would continue to stay in the state house. So that was something that he was attacked against, because it was like, come on, like you're disloyal to the party, working with Republicans and only thinking about yourself, especially in a state like Pennsylvania, and like you mentioned, Philadelphia it's a very safe seat for Rab. He's definitely going to win that. Kamala got what was like 88% of the vote in 2024 against Trump, so it's a very safe seat. It's the bluest district in the country. Um, so there's that, and actually, Alice Stanford, she was considering, or the rumblings are she was considering dropping out And that's what actually the rap campaign was afraid of, because that would have been two establishment or two moderate, quote unquote moderate candidates in the race. So they were splitting the moderate vote. That's how he was able to win, because
Yes,
they
yes,
split the vote. Yeah.
yes.
But she was on, I think it was NBC, and she gave like a really bad answer on like ICE or whatever. She basically said that the federal government shouldn't be involved in immigration. So she was asked about that. She was like, okay, so who should be handling, immigration enforcement? And then she sat there like, and at first she had said something like, oh, like maybe we should just move on. So like, we don't take up too much time or whatever. And then the reporter was like, no, like we like go ahead, like, answer the question or whatever. And she was like, and then gave like a little small, like, whatever top of the mind statement and said, you know what, Congress should do it. And that was it. So it was like really, really bad. And like towards the end, she started, just stumbling. So again, the rap campaign was, they were afraid that she was going to drop out, but ultimately she didn't. But specifically on the just talking about the state at large, it is that if the Democrats can pick up these four House seats that are up for grabs in the state, there were a couple other primaries. There's a one of the Republicans. What was his name? I think it was McKenzie.
Yeah, McKenzie
Yeah,
and,
McKenzie.
and,
He's a
Fitzpatrick.
freshman. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a freshman. He's a freshman
yes.
congressman. He's up for re-election. And who was he going against? I had it written down here somewhere, but I can't see it. But yeah. So
That's the he's
he
going against. I'm sorry not to cut you off. He
yeah.
is going against the is I think it's Bob. Uh, he's going
Bob
against
Brooks.
Bob Brooks, right?
Bob
Who
Brooks
is
for the union, the fire
the
union.
union, the fire union? He's in charge of the fire union,
Yeah,
and
and he's
so
he's endorsed by both the progressive wing of the party and also the establishment wing of the party. He's
yes,
endorsed by Bernie
yes,
Sanders, Chuck Schumer, and Josh Shapiro. And if the Democrats can win, four of these House seats just in Pennsylvania alone, and they just hold everywhere else, they could win the House. Just in these. So it's very, 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 very important that they get these seats, and it's really good for Josh Shapiro, regardless of my takes on him. But because he is well in the state of Pennsylvania, he is very popular. He is well liked, and especially with the fact that Trump's popularity in the state is declining due to the economy, the state of the economy, the fact that he's engaged in this quagmire in Iran, and also with so by proxy the gas prices and things that come with that, and then also to an extent immigration, because his polling numbers on immigration are also declining. So all of that to say, if Josh Shapiro can lead this ticket, he's almost obviously going to win again the governorship again. So if he can prove that, he'll be in a strong spot for 2028, which he is almost definitely going to explore a run for 2028.
yes, he
Yeah.
will. I don't see it actually coming fruition because he is staunch pro-Israel.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is going to be a
Staunchly
problem in the
pro.
Democratic
That would be
primary.
very, very, unless he actually gaslights people and switches that position. Um, you want to move on to? You have another topic locally you want to discuss
No, not on the local topic, but just in Congress. So uh
before
military
we go to
action.
that? Then I do have
Okay, okay.
another local thing. Well,
Oh,
I
go
mean
go
it's
ahead.
not local. So we can move on to because we're going to be dealing with Congress basically the whole
Yeah.
show. But the local things that I've seen that was interesting when we talked about, and you did a ding 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 when you were talking about Stanford was possibly dropping out. So let's play politics. Everybody that's around here, politics is a dirty game. So usually the Democrats like to be the establishment and they call balls and strikes and play the game the way it's supposed to be played, how it's written, The Republican Party usually plays some shenanigans. So, in Nebraska, are you familiar what happened in the Nebraska Senate race? The
No.
shenanigans that went on in Nebraska. It usually happens in Florida. Florida's history is a lot of times they put candidates up that may be dead. They done put candidates up that don't belong actually to the party, and they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. This happened in Nebraska. So Nebraska's current uh, senator is Paul Ricketts, who is the son of Tom Ricketts, who is like a billionaire. He got um, designated as the senator when uh, somebody left and became in the Trump's cabinet. So he has to run again for the full term. He filled out the last year or so. He is running against uh, Dave Osborne, who is an independent.
Yes.
Let me explain you something to everybody about Nebraska politics. You are not going to get elected as a Democrat for a statewide office in Nebraska. Osborne came close to winning in 2024 this seat, but he lost by a few points. Um, he's running again. The Republicans don't want to face Osborne. Well, you would think like, oh well, if it's a third person, the independent is the plan. No. So in the Democratic primary, they had a woman running. I can't think of her name right now. I'm sorry, but you can look this up. And then it was another person that was running in a Democratic primary. That person who was a Democrat and running a Democratic Party was a Republican, was a Trumper, was a pure, and was basically played. Always was a Republican and has sworn fealty to the MAGA party. But they ran in the Democratic primary to try to yuck things up. So, whereas though they could take votes away from Osborne.
Hmm.
So, the person, this woman who ran on the for Democratic nomination stated, if I win, I'm going to drop out of the election, the general election. So Ricketts would have to face Osborne head up.
Hmm.
And what happened? He smoked the MAGA Republican that was faking like a Democrat, won by 40 something points.
Whoa.
And the next day, she dropped out of the general. To make it where as though Ricketts has to go up against Osborne, the independent, who has all the backing from the Democratic establishment, including their financial backing. This is playing fire with fire. And this is not what the Democrats usually do. But they are trying to win. They're playing by the rules of engagement that has been used against them. And I applaud that. What say you?
No, that's crazy. I'm looking it up now because that's man. Uh, but hey, that's the Democratic Party usually doesn't do stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what what's needed. Dan Osby, he's a very strong candidate. And if there's anyone that again, Nebraska, that's one of the Senate seats that if the Democrats can get that, or at least he's going to caucus with the Democrats. So if they can pick that up, that's really going to help their chances of trying to take over the Senate in November, and they have a really good chance of doing that, especially with a lot of the Senate races, in Maine and then even in Alaska. So there's a lot of good
North
opportunities out
Carolina,
there. Yeah, Carolina. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
possibly
Uh,
Texas.
so that's look. I don't now that one is there's a lot of stuff actually going on in Texas because there was even in that gubernatorial in that race the GOP primary for that one, Kim Paxton was going up against John. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Senate
That's
race.
just
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
that's just
against
the,
John Cornyn. Yeah, against John Cornyn and but really, I can get to that in a minute. But
no,
man,
no,
yeah,
no.
I definitely got to look into the Nebraska race because I literally the first thing I saw was a New York Times article about like shenanigans and like things are getting like trickery and stuff like that in Nebraska. So I definitely have a couple of those articles bookmarked. I'm gonna get into that. Um, but yeah, over in Texas, Ken Paxton is he's the state. What is it? He's the Attorney General
The Attorney General,
of
he's a
the
piece of
Attorney
shit.
General of Texas. Yeah, terrible person up there with the governor too. And so in this race, Trump endorsed Ken Paxton against John Cornyn, and he had been going back and forth on who to endorse in this race or whatever the case was. But eventually, Ken Paxton came out and said, "Oh, so backing up
Let's
and
back it up.
saying like being conflicted on who to endorse. He basically said, whoever I endorse, the other person needs to drop out of the race." Because there was a couple of people running in the primary, the GOP primary. So you're saying whoever else, like you need to just completely just drop out of the race so we clear the way for the person that I endorse.
Hold
After
on.
he go ahead.
Let's add. Let me explain because we're politics heads. It's a run. They're going to a runoff because
Yeah,
nobody got 50% in the original primary.
yeah.
This is a tactic by the southern states that were put into place years ago to affect black electability. You have to have plus 50% plus one vote in order to win the primary. If not, you go to a runoff. Usually, when you go to elections, it's a plurality. So you can have, if it's three candidates, the plurality winner, and whoever gets the most percent, the highest percentage wins.
Hmm.
So to actually alleviate the possibility of the black vote and black people getting elected, they made it always whereas though it's 50 plus one. So when you have those more than just two candidates, you have a easy way of not actually getting 50% unless they're a totally a great candidate and they get a whole bunch of the votes. So this was put in years ago
Hmm.
to actually alleviate black people from actually get holding elected positions. But I digress.
Oh, good context. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So Trump, he was tossed on who was going to endorse, but it leaked that he was leaning towards John Cornyn. And so some of his allies were calling him, saying, it would be a betrayal to his base because, King Paxton, he's been very, very, very pro-Trump. And John Cornyn had made a statement like back in 2023 saying hey, like Trump's time is maybe like passed him by, saying like maybe we need like a new standard bearer for the Republican Party. Like it can't be him again, basically. But even with that, Trump was still, a little bullish on the race. So Ken Paxton came out and basically said, you know what? I'll drop out of the race right now if the Republicans in Congress or in the Senate, if they kill the filibuster in order to pass that Save America Act. And that carried, even though obviously that didn't end up happening, it carried a lot of weight with Trump. So ultimately, that was the thing that swayed him to go in and then endorse Ken Paxton. So he's going to be now. It's in the runoff, so we'll see how the runoff. It's on May 26th. So that's
Yeah.
what that's next Tuesday. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, very interesting race down there, and it's just that along with Thomas Massey losing his race over in Kentucky, and that's coming off of also which you had touched on a couple of weeks ago. Those Indiana state House representatives that kind of rebuked Trump. Also, just all that culminating to be like, oh, also in Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, he lost the election as well. And he voted to impeach Trump after January 6th. So Trump's always had something against him. And he actually came in third place in that race. So it was
Yeah.
he completely just was out of it. He only had like 25% of the vote. So again, it's just showing that Trump really has a stranglehold on parts of the Republican Party. And it's just crazy because even though like national, like whether like Democrats and independents, he's declining. Like, and obviously with Democrats, his favorability was always and popularity were always really low. But like specifically with like independents or like moderate Republicans, it's just it's just not there for him. But he does have a stranglehold over a really large portion of this party, and it's just continue to show in these Republican primaries.
To add on to that, for the explanation to people, because everybody that's probably watching us is probably like astonished on like how does this happen? Primaries and generals are two different things.
Yeah.
Because to understand, if you are registered, it's different in every state, but majority of states, if you're a registered Democrat, you only Democrats can vote in a primary. If you're a registered Republican, you only can vote on the Republican Party. The rhetoric that comes out during the primary season literally is different than what happens in the general, because now you're trying to actually court voters from more independents and more moderates from other, and you talk differently. During the primary season is red meat season. This is where you throw your base something for them to gobble up and just devour. So you may be far left or far right during the primary and saying things that they want to hear. But once you get that nomination, you kind of, excuse me, you kind of come down and sway yourself a little moderately to the middle. The issue with the MAGA portion of the Republican Party, which people often always say, this goes back to the Freedom Caucus and the tea baggers. They say that, these are people that are a minority part of our party. They don't really have no say, and they wind up actually taking over the party.
Yeah.
This happens all the time with them. Because I would just always tell people to have the understanding. Republicans are not meant to govern. They are the anti-party. They are always the pushback. They are best served as being the minute minority screaming from behind up in the bleachers and screaming against everything. When it comes to when it's time for them to actually, when they win and actually are in charge and govern, this country goes down. The rich get richer, and the working class and the regular people do not flourish. They talk about often about financial stability and being a fiscal conservative, and the debt always rises. They, but they have the presentation and the style to people that they actually speak a good game, and people fall for it. You can't tell me that you are not in a worse situation than you were 2 years ago. And if you are in a better situation, then you are playing the stock game. You are playing all these shenanigans that these people want you to play. But as an everyday person, you cannot be in a better place.
Hmm.
Not when you got your gas prices to just get to work has doubled. Not when a pound of meat is the same price as the federal minimum wage. Was watching a video the other day, and a person actually told me they were going through over what they actually paid in groceries 2 years ago or last year compared to now. And they said basically they spent $60 to make a pot of spaghetti. A pot of spaghetti, which usually will cost you between $10 and $15. The sauce, the meat, and the pasta. You used to be able to get pasta for 50 cents. It's $3.50. People were talking about how they were buying bags of chips that was 75% air for $6.99.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So that big ugly fucking bill that was passed, and now they trying to reorganize it and change the name of it to the Working's Family. They rebranded it. The money is not coming back in your pocket. When they lie to you, even the Pennsylvania, the incumbent Republican was talking about the Working's Family tax cut and no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, which they're still saying it. And for anyone who actually filed their taxes this year, you are not even filing your taxes. You know that you're still getting taxed for overtime. You know you're still getting taxed on your tips. It's just the fact that at the end of the year, you get to get a tax credit for X amount of it,
Hmm.
so you get a refund. But if you are a skilled worker, a union worker that works over 20 or 15, 20, 30 hours of overtime a week or something to that extent, you're not getting, it's only up to $10,000 that you can get the tax credit for. And it's only the half. It's not the time. It's only the half that you're getting credit for. So it was always in that bill, those tax incentives, some of them started now, some of them trickle in during 28, but it's a 10-year span. That man will be gone and buried, and those tax breaks to those rich people will still be there. But that no tax on tips and overtime,
Hmm.
how many years, Dallas? How many years is that in play? Three.
What was it? Oh, yeah.
Three. And then it goes away. It has to be reauthorized. It's only for
Which
3 years.
which they're not going to do. Same thing with
They're-
with the child tax credit a couple of years ago, which was only for
with-
one. But yeah.
And the craziest thing, I do taxes. One of my things, accounting is used to be one of my past lives that I used to do. Politics is another past life that I do. But with the accounting part of that, some of these things don't come into effect, and then they roll over, and then. But with the child tax credit and things like that, what a lot of people don't understand is now you used to get that at the end of the year, and then you get a little bit more money in your pocket on tax. No, if you put down that you have a child on your I-9 or your W-4 form, you're getting less taxes taken out of your check on a weekly, bi-weekly basis because of that. So you're getting that tax credit throughout the year. So you don't get that bump at the end of the year and get that lump sum of money. That's why did you see about 3 weeks ago or a month ago, the Secretary of the Treasury sat up in front of a fucking podium and said if you want to get some money back in your pocket right now, you should change your W-4 form and write in exempt. So now you will not be actually paying any federal income tax. So you can get more money in your check now. Was he lying? No. What he didn't tell
That's
people
funny.
by saying that is, yeah, you get that money back right now, but at the end of the year when you file, you're going to pay that money back to the government
Yeah,
because you weren't paying in your right amount of federal tax. So he was being honest that you will get more money back in your pocket
yeah.
right now, but you will owe that to the government
The
at
bill
the
will
end of
come due. Yeah,
yes.
all the times.
It's that's when how I tell you where it's go. Republicans know how to talk a good game, and it sounds really good, and it's in some truth. But remember how a lot of our religious people make the whole truth nothing but the truth. Nah,
Hmm.
but they'll say to help me God many damn times because we live in a white nationalist Christian society right
Yeah, yeah,
now.
unfortunate. But everything you said, yeah. I mean, the Republican Party, like they're an opposition party, and that's
Yep.
it.
That's
They
the
can't
term.
be in
Thanks, son.
power.
Thank you.
Yeah,
The opposition party. Yep.
they can't be in power because when they get it, it's like, oh my God, like
We have to
and
govern.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and they're not actually prepared for that. Um, but I actually saw that Scott Besson was at Congress, but I didn't see that part. But yeah, basically that's what they always do is to, like you said, they talk a good game or whatever, and he'll say something and be like, oh, like you yeah, like you don't want to pay federal taxes, like you can just put exempt, you don't have to. But yeah, at the end of the year, here comes this bill, and it's just another example of like the tax code, all these different laws and stuff, they're always for people with money who are giving money to the politicians to create it and craft it. So the stuff that for you, the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime, child tax credit, all these other things that are like for actual working families, for working people, all those things, they got to come back up for a vote. And like whether it's 1, 3, 4 years, whatever the case is. But these other ones, they're in the law until they're not. You don't have to continuously go back and try to reauthorize them. You don't have to go back and say, "Hey, like, should we continue this?" No, as we had talked about in a couple of weeks ago, the corporate tax rate it's just continuously been going down and down and down. And even when Biden was proposing raising it, it was only going to raise it up like 4 or 5%. Yeah,
Back to
not
where it should be.
yeah, not all. He wasn't going to go all the way back to where it was or where it should be, but no, just a little bit over where it currently was. Um, so it's just the country's not people aren't going to be able to survive in this country if the laws, the cities, everything, the transportation, all the amenities, everything in this country, if it's only going to be for people with money, because as education costs are rising, housing costs are rising, transportation, medical costs, or as the cost of living, literally everything in existence is going up. If wages are stagnant or declining, if jobs are declining, it's going to be harder and harder for more and more people to be able to make it and to actually say like, yes, I'm living a good life or I'm happy in my situation. And as long as that's going to continue, then like elections just can't, and just to deviate into something, elections can't continue to be, we're swinging from this party to this party because of we're currently in this moment, and like we think the Republicans are going to be better on immigration and the economy right now, and then now that the Republicans are showing they can't do anything on immigration, and except for just you know the terror and the fear that they're invoking on the streets. And also with the economy, they're showing that actually they should not be leading the economy. It's going to go back to the Democrats. And then once inevitably something else happens, the Republicans is just going to pull out some other kind of social issue. Most likely it's going to be something about Muslims or some other kind of minority group. And then, in the next elections, but we can't continue to do that, because while we continue to go here, 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 the rich people are getting richer. I don't know if you saw Jeff Bezos is over on, I think it was CNBC or whatever, and he's talking about, hey, like, yeah, you can, the bottom 50%, they just shouldn't pay taxes, because we're paying all the taxes in the country anyway. The bottom 50%, they're only contributing like 3% of the tax anyway. Like, what? He's saying these things to try to confuse you and to say like, oh well, like maybe we shouldn't be paying. He doesn't think that that's going to be terrible for the bottom 50% if that happened. Like, it's not going to improve lives. It's not going to improve the country if that happens at all. What's going to happen is then they're going to start cutting social programs
Social programs. Yeah,
because
he
you're
doesn't.
making more money. Yes, that because now you're making more money because you're not paying those federal taxes anymore. So then the first thing they're going to cut, which the Republicans always try to cut, are the social programs, the safety net, because we you don't need a handout. And that's what it's going to do, and it's going to affect so many different people. So until we get serious about who the real enemy is, the billionaires, money, and politics, things are going to change. So just to bring it all back together, that's why it's very important that you have people like Chris Rabb, that you have people like the squad currently in Congress. You have the Bernie Sanders of the world. You have the Abdul El Saids up in Michigan, which actually he was third in that race, and now he's skyrocketing in the latest polls. He's winning that race. So if he can pull that out, that he'll be a great addition to the Senate as well. So like it just if the Democrats can get this done, and the Democrats are really serious about gaining power, especially with the Republican, um, the redistricting, the gerrymandering, the stripping, the taking away voting rights that's going on across the country, specifically in the South. Specifically, we can just touch on it. You see what's going on in
Let's touch
Alabama?
on it.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, where they're doing.
Well,
Oh, you can for these primaries are fine. Go ahead, like we'll count the votes for these primaries, but these other three primaries, now we're gonna get to those on August 11th instead of on Tuesday, and that's because I don't even know how this is legal, but the Supreme Court with that their plans were perfectly fine, so they're now going through to try to take and to screw up these seats of predominantly black communities and districts, and it's taking voices away from black people in Alabama and from Democratic representation, and it's just lunacy, and it's right there in plain sight. They literally said that they're going to reject about 100,000 votes within those other districts. They just said they're just basically not going to count because we're not doing primaries in those specific
which they
districts.
already did. Which they already did in Louisiana. They stopped.
Yep,
They stopped the primary. Also, if
yep.
you didn't see last night, um, the House in South Carolina redrawing the map to erase Jim Clyburn's seat, who's the 84-year-old black. Um, it's the only Democratic district. Sean Massey, who is the speaker, who's the leader in the Senate, said that they should not get rid of the one district because, for one, he admitted out loud, this is a speech, that South Carolina is the most gerrymandered state in the country, and if they actually gerrymandered the one blue district, that this was going to galvanize and motivate black people to come out and vote.
Hmm.
I get, of course, I'm older than you, and I've seen things, and I've had conversations for the last 30 years. One of the main things that I've always hated about my people, and when I had conversations with ignorant people that are part of my community, they always state how voting is not important and how it don't matter. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to change anything. I always push back, and I always will push back. And you can you can actually, you know, remember how I often told y'all growing up how important was voting because people died for it. And I think in a lot of cases, we as a community are so far removed from it. And I often say that, like, your generation, you grew up with a black president. And growing up in people like you a lot, growing up in areas with, diversity and having people, friends of different ethnic backgrounds may have taken things for granted. But the ignorant part of it with the community is thinking that voting never really mattered when it's always mattered because it always, your voice and your power from your voice and picking your elected officials and holding them accountable was always been important. If it's not that important, if it's not a big deal, why have they spent the last 45 years to get to this place? Why? Why did they slow roll this? Why did they slow roll getting rid of Roe v. Wade? Why have they systematically dismantled the Voters' Rights Act since 2013? And they will say because racism is gone, because it doesn't exist. You can't, but they will flip you and also say that it is racist to treat white people this way. Ism. Let me explain to y'all what a ism is. Ism is a system. You can be biased, you can be bigot, you can have bigotry. You can't control an ism unless you have power. You cannot say a black person is racist and performs racism because they, as a group, does not have a power to dictate the system and control it. That's why you can have bigotry and have a bias against people of another ethnic group or immigrants or something to that extent, but you don't have the power to control their daily lives as a whole. You might be a boss that's inside of one company or this, that, and other, and you exercise, but as a whole, it is impossible to do because you do not have the capital and the power to control the system. This is a systematic ploy to try to put people that are not white back in a place. Why do you think, and I'll go with the class right now, why do you believe that this country at this point, nobody can actually, well, not nobody, but the average education is people can't read past the 6th grade level? Because they basically teach you just good enough to be able to clock in and perform the work and actually get things accomplished, but not actually control anything.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother was, until recently, your brother who was born in 2002, he was the cutoff. I found out he was the cutoff to where as though they taught people in school how to
Cursive?
do a signature cursive, to how to tell time by the hands.
Yeah.
I talked to somebody that was born 2003, and they said they didn't have home economics in school. They didn't learn cursive. The person told me when they got old as of age to get their driver's license, they said you have to sign it. They didn't. They only knew how to print their name, and they told them you had to draw a line through it. Just draw a line through it because they only knew how to print.
That's
This is
ridiculous,
why
man.
I always push. This is why I always push back when they talk about this country being the greatest country in the fucking world. When you 64th in education, this is the first generation right now. These Gen Alphas is the first generation that is actually their cognitive skills are actually worse than their parents. Every generation it always gets smarter. This is the first generation that is getting dumber. You can watch all the videos and you can actually see when I saw a video when they were and it was sad to me because it was black students, but they was in Philadelphia and people could not read a letter and they could not pronounce the word silhouette. This is the call, whereas though teachers are leaving the profession and they're complaining because their job, their hands are tied because they want you to still pass people that aren't able to do the work. I remember when you was in school, and your brothers in school, they stopped giving y'all homework. You did all the work in school. You didn't
I
have
have to say,
homework
yeah.
anymore.
Well, sometimes I got my homework done. I got it done early. But yeah.
No, but I'm saying today
Yeah.
there is no homework
Oh, no.
at all. You work in the school system. There
Yeah.
is no
So yeah,
homework.
it's done. Yeah, it's predominantly done. If there is homework, it's very easy. There'll be like homework packets, which is basically just like obviously homework is always an extension of what you're doing in the classroom, but like it really is just like it's very simple. It's very easy. It usually takes them like maybe 5 or 10 minutes max to get it done. And it's just I was actually just having this conversation with we have our school leadership team meetings once a month, and so I was talking to there was a a teacher, a couple of parents that were in there, and just talking about how there was a recent study that came out that was like you know, test scores have are like in both meet reading and math have been declining for years. Compared to what they used to be, because like kids they literally cannot read, and then if they can read, they can't comprehend what they read. If you ask them to read a passage, they can read. Some of them can read it for you, but if you ask them to summarize what they read, some of them wouldn't be able to tell you that. And that's not to like dunk on any of these kids, because obviously, like, who would do that? It's just it's a fact. They're struggling to read, and then you have a conversation with some of the parents, and then you're like, oh well, I see where it comes from, and so it's setting us back, and it's just putting us in a bad spot. But you're right, it's education is not what it used to be, and that's it's one of the reasons why we're in the current situation that we are. If you're educated, if you're aware of what's going on, if you're able to actually, you know, suss out, and comprehend, current events and what's going on, then if you're informed, that goes against what they're trying to do. If you know that the outcomes are only for the rich and the wealthy, then you could do something against it. That's why they're always trying to come out against the unions. That's why they're always trying to squash these protests, because they don't want civil disobedience. They want you to be obedient. They want you to just take whatever is going on, and we can't do that. But and it starts with education. It's the most important. It literally is the most important thing, especially for kids, because they are literally going to be the future lawyers, policymakers, politicians, all these people. So it's very important that um, that we're well informed, man.
To add on to that, so you explain to the audience what do you do and what I mean, like what like age group do you work at? Because you work in the school system, and so they got understanding what you're talking about.
Yeah, I work at an elementary school, but I don't work for the school. I work for an education nonprofit, so I like support the schools. But I'm on like part with like administration through a community-based organization, and so we just do a lot of supports in the school. So when it comes to like attendance, when it comes to academic outcomes and stuff like that, all those kind of things, like we're working towards trying to improve them. And like you said, it really is disheartening to see one, the amount of these kids that literally cannot read. They are struggling to read, and we're doing everything that we can to try to improve that. But one, so it's that, but then also everything that goes on in this country. Specifically, I'm in New York City. Everybody lives in New York City. Every country, every nationality, every kind of person is represented in New York City. And so at the school that I'm in, those kids are literally affected by every single policy conversation that is currently going on. Immigration, Iran, anything with the economy, education, transportation, all of these things are affecting, the kids and the families that my school community, serves. And it's really disheartening to see that, like when ICE really started cracking down last year on, immigration, kids just stopped coming to schools because their parents didn't want to be out on the streets or in the subways, trying to get their kids to and from school. Coming from, whether it was the shelter that they were in, if they were staying with a family member, if they were staying in a hotel, whatever the case was. Um, it's really it really sucks to see, like, there are people that feel the brunt of these policies. So when a lot of people are just able to see, like, oh yeah, like I really don't like what's going on with immigration, or yeah, like I really don't like the way the economy is going, or whatever the case. But you're like, but I'm okay in my situation. These are kids. These are kids. So if you can't put a face or a name to the harm that's going on, so that's what justifies your vote for a Donald Trump or whatever the case is. There are people that are actually affected by these policies, and it's not always just, or even if it is just adults in other parties, and you're just like, oh, they're Democrats, so it doesn't matter, whatever the case is. These are kids who are just here trying to make it, trying to learn what it is to even be a person, trying to learn who they are, and yet they're dealing with real life issues because now their older brother's getting shipped out to Iran because their mom lost their job. Dad got into an accident, so he can't work, so they lost the apartment. These are real life things. These are real life things that they're dealing with. Again, can't come to school because they're afraid of immigration enforcement. Like these are things that people are dealing with, and every single day. And working in education, I really do enjoy it because again, we're teaching the kids, one, try to learn, but also how to be good people, how to be good. And we can only hope that it's going on at home. But we're just trying to, do our part, within the schools. But very important to be, helping to shape young minds and stuff, but not in the classroom, but just around it.
All right. Let's get into um the politics of it all. That on the big picture. I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but this over the last couple weeks of what's been going on down south in Tennessee and Alabama. They're trying to pull some shenanigans actually in Georgia, but Georgia is being is a lot of pushback, but they're
Yeah.
trying to mess around with the maps. Explanation on maps. Um, let's explain to people because the people hear maps this and that, and then how districts and how things are drawn. District maps usually get drawn every 10 years after the census. Hell Leader this year this all started in Texas when the current person who resides in the White House asked the governor of Texas, who's a piece of shit, he needed 5 more seats. So, because if you don't know, at this current point, basically in the House of Representatives, the Republicans are basically in the majority, but they are in the majority by 1 vote between resignations, retirements, or motherfuckers dying and everything else. 1 vote. So, and as it always happens, usually when it comes to the midterms, whoever the president is in power, their party usually loses seats. So trying to grab extra seats so they can stay in power. The reason why we want to stay in power is because if the other party's in power, then they can't push the agenda. So all across the country, this has been popping up where they've been redrawing the maps and trying to add seats to their majority. And the flip side, when they started doing that, then they don't really want this fight. If you really wanted to go do this, because in California, they can do it to where as though it's 52-0. In Illinois, it could be 17-0. In New Jersey, it could be 16, 17, 18-0 if they wanted to really draw it. It was a big thing in New York. They was fighting. They was going to take the 1 Republican seat out of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And they a lot of court cases and things like that. Why is this important? This is important for representation, but Republicans can steal districts, but if the Democrats do the same thing, they're up in arms and pitching about it. This is where, as though I will always say, the hypocrisy of politics in general, but the hypocrisy with the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do as we do, just listen to what we say. Because if you do the same thing as they do, it's a problem. So basically, with the carving out of the Voting Rights Act 2 weeks ago, everybody moved in action to change the maps to disenfranchise 26 million Black people's voters as voters. Over 50% of the Black population in this country lives in southern states. Mississippi is close to 40% Black, and they have no statewide Democratic representation as a whole. This is how people in Texas stay in power. This is how people in Alabama and Arkansas stay in power. It's how West Virginia stays in power. And I'm going to say it straight up like this, and it's kind of like a tutorial. White people would rather vote for their racism and don't have fucking health care, don't have a livable wage, as long as they keep fucking Black people down. That is the reality of this country. And it's always been the reality. Y'all don't have shit. Cool. I'm good if I don't have shit as long as they don't have shit either.
Why is this country the only country that health insurance is a for-profit entity? Whereas though the insurance company gets to tell you how long you get to stay in a facility. The insurance company, when you have a daggone baby, tells you you only get to stay a day or, oh, you got a C-section? Yeah, you can stay 2, 3 days. Then you got to go because we ain't paying no more.
Yeah.
They takes the patient and the doctor out of the equation. It's all based on the insurance company and what they say.
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you a crazy thing when it comes to that. The Biden administration had a law that you couldn't get any surprise medical
Yeah.
bills in your mail. That law doesn't exist anymore. So, and somebody tell me out of the blue now you got, out of nowhere you getting this bill from the hospital
Mhm.
when you never saw bills from the hospital before. Those things was actually came through, your insurance company. That you paid your low copay, or they say this is how much. No, where did this come from? And to the point where as though now they give you X amount of days to pay said bill, or now they sending your ass to what? Into collections.
Mhm.
Those protections is gone. But voting's not that important.
Yeah.
But I digress. But it obviously it has to be somewhat important. Why? Because they taking it from you.
Yeah.
Why would an entity, why would a collection of, why would a government entity, why would the states, why would they take and try to dilute your political capital if it's not important? I was talking to somebody today at work, and they said, I don't care about who in there, long as they make us rich. The fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
What did you need to hit on, son? I'm sorry. I'm just
No, I mean, all of that is right. Like you said, like it's they try to always downplay the importance of voting, but like that's and voting isn't the end all be all. And I think that's why so many people. Just to get at this for a second, I think that's why so many people don't aren't like interested in voting because they think like, oh well, I'm not going to vote. Like if I don't vote or if I vote, nothing's going to change anyway, so I might as well not even go out and do it or whatever. But that's because you're giving into what they want you to think is that voting is the only thing that you need to do, and that's because anytime it's election season, elections rolling up, they'll come out, hey, it's time to vote. Like we need to, you start popping up at the restaurants, they start popping up in the parks, they start, campaigning with the ads and stuff like that. So you see them around. But if they don't need your vote, where are they at? They're in their office taking calls from the lobbyists, meeting with the lobbyists, meeting with the corporations and the wealth and doing the work on behalf of the wealthy people. That's why it's important to protest. That's why it's important to call your representative. That's why it's important to call your senator. That's why it's important to, to be involved and to be in the know of what's going on. Because if you vote New York City, you get Zoran Mamdani in the office. Luckily, he's delivering on a lot of the things that he ran on. However, not everyone does that, but not everyone pays attention after election season. Yeah, if they'll start to notice if grocery prices are going up or if there's like a really big story or something going on, gas prices going up, then they'll be like, oh, what's going on with, I thought he was going to lower the prices, or, what's going on. That if you only pay attention in election season, Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change if you only pay attention to election season. So you have to continuously be paying attention to what's going on. Yes, you need to get out there and vote, but you also need to protest. You also need to call. You need to be aware of what's going on. You need to be informed about what's going on. Because when they try to take your voting rights away, you need to instantly say, no, hey, what are you doing? So you need to attend these council meetings. They're trying to put up a data center in your in your community. You need to go to these meetings and these hearings. Make your voice known. You need to be involved, because if you're involved in the process, if you're in the process, they have to take you seriously, because they're eventually going to need your vote. And like you said, they if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take it away. I mean, literally, they're canceling primaries so that they can steal these seats. There in Tennessee, we had mentioned, they're redistricting, so they're basically to take away the one Democratic seat and the one black in the predominantly black district. They're trying to take that away. The NAACP and the ACLU, they're challenging this this redistricting in the courts, and the NAACP specifically, they're challenging on the merits of even the session that they called for the redistricting itself is illegal, because you just picking up right now and trying to redistrict again, not even within it's not in a census year, but also just in the middle of a primary election. It just doesn't make any sense, and they're trying so hard to take your vote away because it is important. The entire political process is important, and voting,
What did they do?
gets the people in there.
They called a special session. They literally had to change their state's constitution in order to redraw. Their state constitution stated maps could not be drawn until after the 10-year census. They voted to change the constitution so they could actually do it. In Alabama, they were voting during a tornado warning. If you see the videos, you hear the bomb shelter alarms going on. But no, we are in the middle of a tornado, but we got to take the vote from these niggas. Even if we die in here. In Mississippi, they went and placed their vote at their old convention hall or the old building that still had the Confederate flag on it, where they used to lynch people because their current building was under construction. It was symbolism. This is 2026 Confederacy. People walk around talking about the South will rise again. This is it. So when you sit there and say, if I was back there, I'd have did this, that, and other. If I was growing up in the 60s during the movement, I'd have did. You need to be doing it now.
Yeah.
You need to be doing it now. Because it doesn't stop here. This is the beginning. The only good thing about it is a lot of white people see it now because they film and they educate themselves. They're educating themselves. So I don't call for nobody to put themselves in harm, but I'm always going to tell somebody to vote and get people to the polls, because no, voting is not going to get out of this. But I'm gonna tell you this much: it's going to help. It's the first step.
You gotta get the right people in.
And then you hold people accountable.
Yep.
To doing for the people. It's not just voting, it's accountability. And it starts with your local elections. I've said it before on here. Pay attention to what's going on at your school board and what's getting taken out. What books are they banning? What's the curriculum? What's going on with your local representation? Because that's how you get your street lights. That's how you get that pothole. That's how you get your trash collected
Directly affects your life. Directly
every
affecting your
day.
everyday. Yep.
And when you're talking about these data centers, explain something to y'all. Let's wait. They put these places in, but they put these data centers and these pollution and low, and they put them in the Black community. Memphis is fighting them because they got a data center in their backyard and it's causing all kinds of problems for them. That's how
Increasing utility bills.
that's how your utility bills go up. In Utah, Canadian Kevin O'Leary,
Shark
Kevin
Tank.
Leary from Shark Tank,
Yeah.
he's trying to get what is it, Dal?
It was like
It's
it's a
four football fields.
it's huge.
It's
I
four
yeah. I'm
none
blanking
of
on
it.
exactly what it was. I don't know if it
It's
was
four football
but
fields or something, but it's going to use up so much energy. Oh, that's not the 50,000 residents at Lake Tahoe. They have to go find a new water source because the
yeah.
data center that they put in that area is using up all their water. That's the 50,000 residents that live there all year long. We're not talking about the
Yeah.
3 million people that come during the summertime. They don't have water.
That year round.
They don't have water.
40,000 acres for Kevin O'Leary's data center. 40,000 acres going to completely dry up all of the resources in the state. Not just the locality, the state.
And let me explain to you. He says the people of Utah spoke. It was a unanimous vote. It was what?
3 people?
Three city council people, not the public. It wasn't to a public vote. It was 3 city councils may have gotten persuaded somehow to vote for this thing.
Yeah.
3 people, 3 elected officials stole their city down.
Yeah. Because what do you think a billionaire? It's not hard for a billionaire to persuade 3 people in Utah, to do anything, So like you said, it wasn't like he had to get the approval of the city. It's not like he had to get the approval of the state or even just like the state legislature or anything no, just 3 individuals.
3 people.
And then
3
he's also
individuals.
and then he's saying it's like Chinese spies or like Chinese agitators that are like speaking out against it in Utah, but really it's just like 2 white girls who just live in Utah that are against the data center that are like uncovering all this stuff and like leaking information and stuff about it. So it's absolutely ridiculous, but like it's going on like you mentioned in all these different communities around the country, and they're just never going to stop. It's drying up the resources, it's taking up land, and it's going to take AI as a whole is going to take millions of jobs. But in the meantime, what do you think is going to be going on with these data centers? They're going to bring jobs, but the jobs are construction jobs to construct the data center. And then after that, how many people do you need to maintain the data center? It's going to be maintenance and repair. That's it. That's it. That's it. Maintenance and repair. So IT repairs, but still, so it's going to be for a specific group of people. It's a hellhole. It's a hellscape that we're in, and it's the fact that they're allowing it to happen.
What are those the immigrants that's taking the jobs?
That's what I wrote when you were talking about the like white people, they just don't care as long as black people. Donald Trump told you that the problem with your life is that the immigrants were taking your jobs, and that the immigrants were taking up the housing, and that they were also eating your dogs and your cats. So now that they're cracking down on the immigrants, why are the prices still going up?
Because
If they're
immigrants
doing
did jobs that
yeah
regular Americans didn't want. Why are you paying $2 for a green pepper?
yeah
Because y'all didn't want to go out there in them fields.
yeah. I guess the immigrant also declared an illegal war on Iran, so gas prices went up too. So it's like every time something happens, it's the immigrant, or it's this other person, it's this black person, it's the trans person. That's funny. That's what Thomas Massey actually said when he gave his concession speech on Tuesday. He said, one thing, APAC was very strong in that race because Thomas Massey came out strongly against Israel.
$33 million
Yeah,
on and they spent $33 million in a Republican primary.
yes, and actually, I guess kind of going to touch on that race. Thomas Massey has won the last three elections. So in 2022 and 2024, he won with 75% of the vote. In 2020, he won with 80% of the vote in these primaries. These are the same. It's not like he got redistricted or anything. These are the same voters that he's been going up to and say, "Hey, I want your vote," for years. 4 years.
16. He's been in that district. He did
Yes.
16 years.
Yes. And now all of a sudden he is losing. I think I forgot what it
91%.
was.
He
Yeah.
voted 91%
Yeah.
with the
With
Republicans.
yes, but just coming out rhetorically against Trump one too many times, specifically against Israel too many
And that
times,
and the
and that's what
Epstein
did it.
files.
Yeah,
The
yep.
Epstein files.
Working with Ro Khanna over on the Democratic side to release the Epstein files. Yeah, it just didn't play well for the Republican base, and I forgot what the margins on that race were, but I think he lost by about 15 points or something like that. What again?
A warm body against a warm body.
Yeah,
President Trump came
yeah.
out and said, all I need is a warm body to run. So,
It could have been anyone.
so the people of Kentucky in that district lost their autonomy by voting for the other candidate because, of course, that person has no stump speech. That person does not have a vision. His vision is whatever Donald Trump says it is.
Pro-Trump and pro-Israel.
That's it.
Pro-Trump and pro-Israel. After the race, AIPAC came out and said, pro-Israel. I actually have it right here. Pro-Israel Americans are proud to back candidates who support a strong U.S.-Israel alliance and help defeat those who work to undermine it. And and he said specifically for who was it that went up against something Gowron that went up against Thomas Massey, and then also shouting out Clay
Ed,
Fuller, who yeah,
Ed
Ed Gowron, yeah.
Gowron.
Yeah, and also alluded to Clay Fuller, whoever placed who won the primary to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene over in Georgia, because Marjorie Taylor Greene also came out against Israel and in support of the Palestinians. Thomas Massey not so much in support of the Palestinians as much as just anti-Israel, but still, so AIPAC very strong in these races, and it's just to say like you said, now these people lost a voice in Congress because Edgar Ryan, he's a warm body. He's going to be pro-Trump and he's going to be pro-Israel. He's not going to be pro-Kentucky. He's not going to be pro-worker. He's not going to be pro-voter. He's definitely not going to be pro-black. So it's just a shame. But these are things that happen all over the country, and it's who the Republican Party is. What the Republican Party is becoming. In terms of the AIPAC portion of these things, it's also what the Democratic Party is as well. I mean, and so, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't touch on this before. And that Pennsylvania 3 race that Chris Rabb won in Philadelphia, I he would never be president in his lifetime. Cory Booker, and I hope he runs in 2020 and humiliates himself. But Cory Booker decided that he was going to go over there and campaign for Tariq Street. Less than a year ago, Cory Booker went on live television and said he was asked whether or not he was going to weigh in on Zohran Mamdani winning the Democratic nomination to be the mayor of New York City. He won the primary. The primary voters spoke. He won the primary. I'm not going to weigh in on what's going on. I only will focus on my state. At that point, Mikey Sherrill was still running for governor. He was like, "Oh, I'm worried about what New Jersey has going on. I don't weigh in on what's going on in other states." So what are you doing in Pennsylvania then, brother Cory? If you don't weigh in what's going on in other states, huh? Maybe it's because you're taking that AIPAC money and you can't, and you're against Zohran Mamdani. So it's not about the fact that you don't endorse another country or another state, so you don't worry about what's going on in other states. No, that's what it is. It's AIPAC, and they have such a stranglehold over both parties. It's not just the Republican Party, it's also the Democratic Party, which is why Israel was able to do a lot of what they were doing to Gaza under Joe Biden. It's also part of the reason Kamala Harris lost in 2024. Not the main reason, but it's a large reason why a lot of people, specifically progressives, specifically young people, did not either one, actually turn out for her, or two, feel good about turning out for her and voting for her. And it's part of the Democratic Party. They actually just today they released the draft of the autopsy on.
It's been released.
Yeah, literally today. And again, it's just the draft of it. But. And I didn't have a chance to fully go through it. I literally just saw it and I was like, oh, okay. But yes, as to why she lost, but I'm almost that has to be the reason. That it has to be part of the reason right there. And more and more people they're getting I'll just say hip to the idea of what AIPAC is, and now there's talk of like people that you wouldn't even think that knew what was going on in politics years ago are now saying like, oh, like I'm not going to trust anybody that's taking AIPAC money and stuff. And it's just because they have such a strong stranglehold over our politicians, and another country shouldn't do that. It's a shame that billionaires, the American billionaires, have that kind of power over our government. A foreign country, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's just it's nerve-wracking when you actually think about it. Just because it's this incursion has been in the awakening over several different presidencies. The reason why it's getting done now is because this is the last ditch effort, because they found a patsy to actually. They were trying to get Obama to do this. He came out with a deal. They tried to get Biden to do this. He pushed back on it. They tried to get Obama to run ICE the way it's being run now, with the incursions and the surges in different cities, and then he pushed back on that. Did Obama deport more people than Trump has? He absolutely did. Was it plenty of protests? Yes. Why was it so quiet? Because it wasn't separating the families. It was actually criminals, and actually criminal. Because what you do not know, what everybody does not know and doesn't pay attention to, overstaying your visa is a civil complaint. It is not criminal that gives you jail time.
Not a crime, no.
It is not a crime. Do we actually, when I say we, I'm saying this country, actually celebrate people coming over here to Ellis Island and signing a book. That was the immigration policy. There was none. You just come. And guess what? Were you getting Europe's best? Or were you getting the riffraff? Were you getting their criminals? Were you getting the ones they were kicking out? Were you getting the ones like, yo, ain't shit going on over here for me. Let me go over there on the other side. They just letting us in. But they were. You got the riffraff. So when they demonize these brown people and black people coming here, the Europeans did it. They were criminal.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have skills. They wasn't making bank. You think somebody that was living high off the hog wind up trekking over on a boat and bringing their riches over here? It's all a design game, the system, so you can point at somebody else for you not being where you want to be and how your life is, when it all actually is the government and the system that you are under.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. Things are working the way they want them to work, the way it's designed. No if, no ends, and no buts.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start to wrap up. What's your little party shot? You got anything? This is what Hill said. What Hill said you want to get along to the people?
Yeah. Actually, too, and I wanted to touch on this as soon as I heard about it, because it just sounded so crazy. It sounded crazy, but also just very in line with who Donald Trump and the Republican Party just currently are. But it also wraps up with something that happened in Congress or in the Senate. Literally just was it yesterday or was it literally yesterday? Um, so Donald Trump, sometime earlier this week, or maybe it was over the weekend, he said he was asked about American, like the American voters and the American people, their like financial situations, given what's going on, and in the Middle East. So talking about rising gas prices, grocery prices, all that kind of stuff. Donald Trump literally on camera in front of a bunch of people said that no, I really don't think about American finances. It's not something he's focused on. He's just focused on Iran not having a nuclear weapon. That's all that he's focused on and worried about. JD Vance then followed up because then obviously there was an outcry saying, why does the president of the United States not care about, what's going on in American households? Why does he not care about how well they're doing financially? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he say that? JD Vance went on the offensive and said the media is misconstruing what he said and saying, well, first he started off by saying the president never said that. He said, well, no, you're making that up. He didn't say that. He said that. So then next day followed up again. He said, oh, no, well, you're misconstruing what he meant. And that's not what he meant. Of course, he takes American finances seriously, but it's just the fact that when he's negotiating, he's not thinking. The only thing he's thinking about during the negotiations is that Iran not having a nuclear weapon. No, you can't try to clean that up. He doesn't care about American finances because he's worried about himself. He's worried about his family. He's worried about his donors. For some reason, he's worried about Israel. That's who he's worried about right now. That's where his focus is. That's why I don't know if you saw, but they created basically he was suing the IRS because they leaked his tax returns. And then which makes absolutely no sense. So he's suing the IRS because they leaked his tax returns.
IRS.
The court said, my man, You're a member of every party associated with this. You can't, no. So this can't go through. So what he wanted a settlement. So he wanted to settle. And basically what ended up happening, they created a $1.776 billion slush fund. Let me say this, $1.776 billion trust fund, like 1776. And also in this deal, I'll get back to the slush fund, but also in this deal, he and his children cannot be audited again. He will not be audited again for the rest of his life. So it doesn't matter what he's doing, what his kids are doing, what money they're getting from Saudi Arabia, as part of the Live deal, or as part of any other kind of deals that have been made in the past, from Qatar, from whatever kind of shady deals have been going on over there. It doesn't matter. None of that is going to get audited. We're not going to look into any of that. But also, he's using this money to basically as restitution for the people from January 6th, all the people from January 6th. So it doesn't matter if you were someone that beat up a cop, that actually destroyed property, or if you were just someone that, maybe you were in the back and then you just happened to, just walk in the Capitol and you just went through and took pictures. Doesn't matter. And a lot of these people, and mind you, to take a step back, he also pardoned a lot of these people already. Blanket pardon for almost everyone associated with January 6th, regardless of what they did, regardless of if these people were pedophile sex offenders, which a portion of them were, already criminals for whether it's domestic violence, assault, whatever the case, which a portion of them already were. All of these things. But it's just, I say all this to say, Trump tells you who he is every single day. The Republican Party, they're continuously rewarding him by following him. That's what these primary elections this week showed, is that, again, Trump still has a very strong stranglehold over that portion of the party. The fact that he's just coming out and saying, I don't care what's going on in your personal life. I don't care that you can't afford to live. I don't care that you can't afford rent or to buy a home. I don't care that you can't afford to fill up the gas tank. I don't care that you can't afford the groceries and that you're in the line at the food bank. I don't care about any of those things, and I don't think about them because I'm only worried about myself. He's coming out and he's saying it. Democrats, if you take power in November, don't lose it. You need to, one, stop everything that he's doing, and then in 2028, we need to run a really good candidate that's actually going to go in and create change. Obama ran on change, but obviously he wasn't who he said he was going to be. It's not how things turned out. Whether or not, and we don't have the time to get into it today, so whether or not that was on him or on Congress, conversation for another day. But the political winds are there for change to happen, and it needs to happen because we can't continuously have presidents and a party that clearly don't give a fuck about us.
Concur. I concur with that. My parting shot for today is the hypocrisy. And it's a theme that we basically have been going through this whole show. And I believe it's actually a theme that we've actually been speaking about since we started this show. This week, was it this week? It might have been last week. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, actually stood up in a podium during a press conference and tried to trumpet the possibility and the co-signing of the fact that members of the House of Representatives have not gotten a pay raise since 2009. And they have a meager salary of only $174,000. And it's very detrimental to them because they are unable to purchase a home in DC and take care of their home back in their district. if you look at with inflation, they are currently making 31% lower than what they should be. And to offset this issue, they should be allowed to trade stocks so they can support their family. I say to him, like everyone should say to him, fuck you in the drive-through, and I piss on you if you're on fire. No, I would not. They haven't gotten a raise since 2009. And guess what? The minimum wage has not changed since 2009. Something totally in their control. They are not taking care of the American people. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25. I'm going to say it again. $7.25. I know many people may live in different states. Some people may not know what their state's minimum wage is because they don't live that life. And magically, the poverty level in this country was raised to $15,000. Why? Because when you do the math, 725 times 40 over 52 weeks comes up a little bit over $15,000. So if you are working a minimum wage job full time, you are above the poverty line. Who can live off of $15,000 a year? Not a family, not a single person. Period. But 174,000 is not enough money for Congress. So we gotta let them, do some insider trading, trade some stocks so they can try to, make some money to make that up. This is the point where as though people are so out of touch. You're going to talk about stock trading and making 31% less than what the cost of living and spikes and everything for congressional members. But you vote constantly against raising the federal minimum wage for everyday people. And you say it with a straight face. I'm going to leave y'all with this. I trust no man that shares an app with their teenage son to monitor if they're masturbating and watching porn.
He doesn't do that.
He does. I don't make things up. I just speak facts that how it comes up and things that he has admitted.
These people are in charge, man. Oh, man. Dang.
Yeah. Let that sit in. But when every time there's a CPAC or a Republican convention, Grindr crashes in this town that they're in. They hate gay people, they hate trans people, but they always get caught with one or the other. There you go. With that, we're going to hit the 2-hour mark. And it was very interesting conversation. Hopefully you thought so. And hopefully we brought you some news and some information that you can digest, because the news outlets out there are not actually covering the things in detail. And we want to give you the spin to understand how you should process these things and how to move. I thank everybody that reached out to us and that's supporting us. And if you're not watching this live or you catching it later date, you know, send a comment. And I thank y'all for starting, build a following. And I'm glad that you like the content that we're putting out for you. As always, as is, progress is a state of mind. It's time to get your mind right. Always. Until next time, thanks
Have a nice one.
and good night.